It's not very good.
I would definitely put it in the top 10.
So good.
It's kind of a mess.
A great work of cinema.
Train wreck.
Beyond a slasher, beyond a jump scare.
More thought has gone into the story.
Respecting the source material.
Extremely gory, extremely violent.
The lighting, the sets, the costuming.
Extremely scary.
Well staged, well shot, well acted.
I saw the comedy for what it is.
Relentless.
It was just really, really good.
This is pretty cool.
Another reason why I think it's
So good.
We do have a system, and it works.
Hello and boo! Out there in podcast and YouTube land, you have reached Johnny Has the Keys, and it's the most wonderful time of the year to us here. I know my favorite holiday, and I think Tim likes the holiday a lot. May not be his favorite, but he likes it a lot. Anyway, this is a podcast where two guys get together. We discuss horror and science fiction films, television, sometimes literature, key elements that contribute to the topic of the week, and things that topic influences going forward in time or to the present. If you're new to us, we'd love to hear how you found us. Let us know down below in those comments. Say, hey, found you online, or somebody recommended you, or whatever. We'd love to hear from you, and also ring the bell, subscribe, do all those things that you're supposed to do. If you're rejoining us, welcome back. We're glad to have you here. Like I said, it's almost spooky time. I'm here with my good friend Tim. Tim, what have you been doing? Have you been scaring yourself, or?
Actually, I have.
Oh, 'tis the season.
Well, yeah, this one's been a long time coming. I'm talking about my genre week topic, which is what we usually do when we open.
Yeah.
And this one came out last December, and I'm just now getting around to seeing it, but it's the appropriate time. I finally caught Robert Eggers' version of Nosferatu.
I haven't finished it yet. Haven't had a chance to finish it, but I just started. Interesting. Ironic, we're on the same page.
Yeah, I am blown away by it. I've actually watched it twice now. I had watched it a couple nights ago, and I watched it again last night. I could have sworn I put this movie on our list for this season, and I was not going to talk about it today, and then I double-checked, and it's not on there, so it must have fallen off during our negotiations or whatever.
I could have sworn it was on there, too. Well, I know it was on the list. I don't know if it made the cut, so to speak.
I was thinking it was like one of the finals. We do big ones at the end, and I looked, and it's not there. But after watching it, I've been ranking modern day horror directors, and Mike Flanagan's always going to be number one with me, but I'm beginning to think Eggers is number two. He's
really over like Guillermo or Ty West or any of them.
Well, I still like Ty West, and I still like Guillermo, and there's others as well that I can't think of at the time, but I'm talking about like top two favorites. He certainly has crafted my most favorite Dracula movie. It's not Dracula, technically. It is a remake of Nosferatu, but it's got a lot of Dracula elements in it, of course, because Nosferatu was a ripoff of Dracula back in 1922.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. The atmosphere he creates, the dread, the stunning visuals, he pays attention to historical accuracy, the lighting, everything about this film is just great. The romance is there, but it's not the smarmy romance that I associate with some Dracula movies. It's very sexual. It's very repulsive. It's disturbing. But the best thing about this movie is that it's scary, too. It literally scares me in places. It's written and directed by Eggers. It was based on the Henrik Galeen screenplay and, of course, the book Bram Stoker. They credit that because I don't think Galeen did at the time. The cast is great. It's got Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård, Willem Dafoe. A synopsis is, in the 1830s, estate agent Thomas Hutter travels to Transylvania for a fateful meeting with Count Orlok, a prospective client. In his absence, Hutter's new bride, Ellen, is left under the care of their friends Frederick and Anna Harding. Plagued by horrific visions and an increasing sense of dread, Ellen soon encounters an evil force that's beyond her control. This movie, all of Eggers' movies are in the 90s on Rotten Tomatoes, with exception to this. This is
Really?
only, yeah, it only gets 85. And that's with 364 reviews. So I would bump that up to 95, probably 100, because this one checks all the boxes for me. He is just a master at creating a sense of dread through atmosphere, for a lack of better phrasing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would probably agree with the reviews just because I'm only halfway through. I've only made it to where the boat landed in London and Orlok has arrived or whatever. And I'm sure the pace will pick up from there. It always does in any Dracula adaptation. But I struggled with it because I just finished spending last year or whatever doing my own Dracula project, and I kept getting confused. Even you just doing the synopsis then. I was getting confused because I was like, wait, so who's who? Where's my Mina? Where's my Lucy? Where's all the names are different and all the stuff is different, but the story is still Dracula. The plotting is still very Dracula-esque.
Well, so's the 1922 silent film. That's why it got yanked.
Well, yeah. So, like you said, this is more like maybe I need to go back and revisit Nosferatu, the original, because I
Yes.
haven't seen it in a long time. I remember the Klaus Kinski one, but
Now, that
no,
one
I
they
haven't.
tried to make into Dracula by changing the names to the Stoker names.
Okay.
They did
So maybe
use
that's
like
just
Harker and Van Helsing and stuff.
yeah. So it definitely would not so far halfway through the film or a third of the way through the film, so to speak. It so far would not rank as one of my favorite Dracula films yet, or my favorite Dracula film, but. It is great. The thing that Eggers does best is just like in The Witch. He's using like all this naturalistic lighting and all these very simple structures to everything. It's very well done. It's very well structured. So
Yeah, and The Witch and this are like ranked the lesser of the four films he's done. They rank The Northman and The Lighthouse higher. And I was like, I haven't seen The Northman, but I've seen The Lighthouse, and I don't like it as much as I like The Witch, and I certainly don't like it as much as I like this.
well, see, I haven't seen either one of them. I've only seen The Witch. So I haven't seen Northman. I have not seen Lighthouse, which I've heard is
Yeah.
great too. Very atmospheric, black and white, yada, yada, all that.
And it's got Willem Dafoe in it too. It's good. I need to see it again. It just didn't grab me as a horror movie, so to speak.
See, I haven't seen Defoe yet. I haven't reached that part where he's
Oh, he's great.
where he's introduced or whatever. The Van Helsing character. He plays Van Helsing, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Because
he
he's definitely
does,
not-
but it's a different name. It's a Swiss doctor.
Of course it is. Yes.
And I don't know if you remember the ending of when we covered Nosferatu as a double feature a couple of years back. I don't know if you remember the movie, how it ended. Not the remake, but the original. But this movie ends very similar to the silent film.
I remember all the shadows and the shadow work and everything else. And that's one of the things I liked about this. At the beginning, I love the way he used Orlok's shadow and the power of evil and all of that. And it wasn't pretentious. It was just extremely well filmed.
Well, it's
very
also
cool.
homage because they do a lot of that in the German film, the Murnau film, too.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But in closing, how did this guy only have 4 films? He's such a master, and all his films are so beautiful. Well, I discovered he was a production designer before he was director. And I was like, he was making
okay.
movies pretty before he started directing. One of the other things I like about this that you have had a little bit of trouble with because of the Dracula crossover is that he does stick to the story elements of the original film. Unlike the
Okay.
Herzog remake with Klaus Kinski, where they like try and go back and change the names to the Stoker names. I'm like, no, just honor this film as it is. It was a ripoff, but it's 100 years later. Let's move on.
Right. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, so interesting. So you did something scary for the week of
did.
Halloween, and I actually did too. And you went more modern. I went very, very classic. For me, very classic because it's the 50th year anniversary, and it happens to, in my repertoire, be the movie I have seen the most of any other movie. I saw this movie over 70 times in a movie theater. And I went back and revisited 1975 Mr. Spielberg's Jaws, one of my
Nice.
favorite scary movies of all time. Again, another movie that is just scary, well acted, well told, well crafted. And every time I watch it, I just enjoy it more and more and more all the time. Doesn't matter. I could see, as again, I've seen this movie probably almost 100 times. I would think it,
I've seen it that many.
yeah. And
Not
it's
in
one
a
of those
theater,
that
but definitely on video and DVD.
it was before Steven's contract allowed him to go back and mess with stuff like he did with Close Encounters and everything else. So it's pretty much what we saw in 1975 when we saw it. And I loved it. It was scary and it was atmospheric. I don't want to say a lot about a 50-year-old movie that we've covered in the show anyway and say, look, it's a great film. Go watch it. If you haven't, go experience Jaws.
Right.
Right.
As far as segues, though, you mentioned that Jaws is a movie you've probably seen 100 times. I feel like I've maybe seen this movie close to that many times. I didn't see it that many times in the theater because I was only 15 when it was released, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. Well, in Jaws, I was only 10 because that was 75. See it a couple times in the theater. This one I saw once in the theater, was a little puzzled, and have grown to love it since then. It is Stanley Kubrick's 1980 masterpiece, The Shining. Just watching this again the other day on Blu-ray, I was like, there's so much in this movie, not necessarily cinematography or anything, but let me give you a brief synopsis. For those of you that have lived under a rock for the last 40-something years,
Right.
this book came out in 77. It's a Stephen King novel, and it is about a family that agreed to be caretakers of a hotel over the winter. This is a hotel that's isolated up in the mountains. You cannot access it because of the weather, so they need to hire somebody to look after it in those winter months. Jack agrees to do this. Jack Torrance, that is. He's a writer, a little down on his luck. I may be saying a little bit from the novel because I just recently reread it and I'm getting him a little bit confused. But he's a not so great teacher, and he looks at it as an opportunity to finish his great novel because he's got writer's block, and he thinks that a winter term up in the mountains in the hotel with his family and no one else will give him the time and space he needs to finish it. What he doesn't realize, none of them really, except for maybe Danny, realizes is this hotel is haunted. It has got a very bad past with lots of death and lots of ghosts. The twist in the Stephen King novel and the movie itself that you don't get in every haunted house novel is that Danny, his child, has the shining, which is King's word for a clairvoyance or a second sight. When they are checking into the hotel, technically moving in, on the very last day, the staff's getting ready to leave, and they meet the cook, Halloran, Dick Halloran, but still a little bit chauvinistic, but Ullman takes Jack off to the side and sends Wendy to the kitchen, basically, to meet with Halloran and to see where all the food is and stuff. Dick Halloran meets Danny, and Dick has the shining too, and he recognizes it in Danny. And with a brief moment over ice cream, he tells Danny, basically, you're going to see things in this hotel, but you just need to treat them like pictures in a book. They can't hurt you. But the problem is that they can, and they especially can when they can get through a medium as weak as his father, who they prey upon until he decides he has to kill his wife and kid, basically. And eventually, as things spiral out of control, more and more ghosts appear. All of a sudden, Wendy can see the ghosts. Danny, of course, sees the ghost. Jack sees the ghost. Jack actually has practically physical contact with the ghost. And I'll leave it at that because both the ending of the book and the ending of the movie are different.
Correct.
You want to give me your first experience with this movie?
Oh, I saw this movie in the theater when it came out, probably a few times. And then I remember I've seen it many times since then. I think you and I have seen it several times together.
Oh, my God.
So to speak.
At least 20.
Yeah, at least. This time was a little bit different. Watching it this time, I also went back and did a lot more research on making of, theories, conflicting cinematography kind of stuff, because I thought that'd be fun to play with rather than just the artistic appreciation of the film itself, which is, like you said, a masterpiece and brilliant and should be taught in cinematography school and yada yada and all of those things. But I feel the same way about it that I felt back in 79 or 80. When did it come out?
This was filmed in 79. It came out in 80.
This is a really cinematic, good horror movie based on a really good book, and both of them are totally different. They are not the same thematically. They are not the same, other than the basic setup. And I really saw it this time looking into it. And one of the big revelations I wanted to throw at you before you tell me your first experience was The Shining. Other than getting Halloran killed, The Shining doesn't really do anything in this movie. In the book, it's a big deal because I think in the book, I haven't read the book recently at all. You said you had. In the book, it seems like there's a lot more scenes from Danny's perspective. Like the whole topiary attack and everything else. That's Danny's point of view, not Jack's point of view.
Well, later it's Jack's, but yeah, it's more Danny's in the beginning.
Right. So it seems like, in other words, the way I remember the book, because I remember reading the book. I read the book when it came out, and I remember while I was reading it, it snowed at least one day while I was reading it, which was terrifying. The book has a lot more, like, almost like Danny's Shining being the catalyst. Even though Halloran has been there for however long he's been there, and he's not the catalyst. He didn't make Grady do anything or make the hotel go crazy. But Danny somehow does. Danny, through Jack, ends up, I think maybe the supernatural is much more apparent in the book, whereas in this, I think he does leave it ambiguous except for a couple of points. But other than that, it could be construed as, yeah, this is all Jack going freaking Looney Tunes, and he was going to kill his family anyway. Or he's pushed by
that's Stephen
whatever.
King's interpretation of it.
Or pushed by whatever's happening, and he's going to kill his family. But the novel is much more supernatural oriented, even down to the ending and how it works and everything. Plus the fact that I will always, always, always in literary history remember the scene where Jack beats his own face off and then still keeps chasing Danny. That
I'm not your daddy anymore.
That terrified me as a kid.
There's other scenes in the book that are a little more supernatural. One is with a very pesky wasp's nest.
Oh, yeah.
That Jack has to dispose of because Danny gets stung. Another thing is a very aggressive fire hose in the hallway that comes after Danny, like a snake.
Yes, like a snake. Yeah.
So there is a little bit more supernatural to the book but there's definitely supernatural to this movie. And before we go on, you mentioned Grady, and for those of you folks out there that don't know, Grady was the former caretaker 10 years prior to the Torrance family, who ended up chopping up his wife and kids into little bits, according to Mr. Ullman in the job interview.
And to Grady later, he just says, I corrected them.
Right.
Yes.
But my first experience with this movie was, I was on vacation in Atlanta from Tennessee at the time, and I went with my cousin and her friend, and her mother dropped us off, and they wouldn't let us in because it was rated R. And so her mother paid for a ticket and went in with us and then left. And about 5 minutes later, the ushers came and made us leave.
Seriously?
Yes. And we were so pissed. And so I was staying with my brother at the time, and he wanted to see it. So we went a few nights later, and he stayed so that I could watch the movie.
Well, good.
So I essentially got kicked out of this. Both of us had mixed opinions at the time. I don't know why, but both of us were like, I had not read the book yet because I was still pretty young. I think I had read Salem's Lot. And I was not, I don't know. I thought it was cold and maybe slow, but now with all the films that I worship and watch, this highly, I have mentioned my top 5 films numerous times, and I'm like, wait a minute, this movie really needs to be there too. So it is definitely in my top 10 movies of all time, if it's not in my top 5. And in the 80s, during the whole revolution of VHS tapes, I had a copy of this, and I swear I watched it every week. I know that we used to go to my house after rehearsals and watch it at least once a month, too.
Yeah, probably.
So,
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, from the music to the cinematography to it's just, yeah, it was always something. It was always great to watch it.
So scenes, every one of them.
I basically narrowed mine down to 4. One being I love the opening again, and I say that a lot. The music alone so establishes the dissonance and sets it up. I get nervous just watching the credits sequence.
The music alone.
And this time around again, I paid a lot of attention to the music and to music stings, like where he comes in with stings and where he doesn't, and everything else with the axes, and where the music goes away, where the heartbeat is added, which I think is really cool. So that works really well.
And that weird plucking. It sounds like a harp almost. Like
when it's getting into that boom, 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 it's really creepy.
Like when he's coming around the corner and she's reading his papers.
Oh,
Actually, that may be silence. There may not be music there. I can't remember.
And I think that is one of the most iconic scenes in this too, which is probably on your list. It's on mine, which is the all work and no play. The elevator, of course, just that one simple snippet of photography of just the elevator bleeding all over the room.
Well, that was the whole commercial for you before the movie came out. That was all you saw was the elevator letting the blood out.
What else? I'm throwing mine out. What are yours? Come on.
You mentioned the all work and no play make Jack a dull boy leads up to, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't that lead up to the backing up the staircase? Because that's one of my favorite scenes.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
She's
That's
got
on
the
mine
baseball
too.
bat. She's clearly scared of her husband. And he starts talking to her and walking her backwards up the staircase. And by the time he gets her up the staircase, with all her denying and her saying, Jack, calm down, he escalates to where he starts grabbing at her, and she cocks him with that bat. And that is one of the best falls I've seen by any stuntman. They're tumbling backwards down a staircase. So
my notes say windy bat scene. So
Yeah.
same thing.
the scene with Halloran and Danny in the kitchen over the ice cream. Scatman Crothers is amazing in this movie. I'm sure we'll get into some of the details of, as far as directing and how many takes they took. But he was literally, he practically had to retire after this movie because he was pushing 70, I think, at the time.
I think so too.
And he would break down in tears because it was just too much for him. But you can see the performance that Kubrick wanted. It's there in Scatman Crothers' eyes. So that scene, any of the scenes where ghosts pop out, like with the little girls in the hallway, or Great Party, Isn't It? Or the bear/doggy guy going down on the butler. I can't remember. I don't know what costume that is.
It's a bear costume, I think.
Is it a bear?
Wolf.
Okay.
Wolf. It's a wolf. Yeah.
Is it? I don't know what it is, but he's in a costume and he's clearly going down on some guy.
It's the birth of the furries. No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, to me, I've got both of the big wheel scenes.
Oh, wait, I have it. It's right there.
Right.
It looks like a dog.
Those are bear ears, definitely.
They're
So
bear ears, but a dog face. Yeah.
I've got both of the scenes with Danny on the big wheel, mostly just because of the audio.
Yeah.
And the way it's shot. This was one of the first, there had been a couple of films before this, but this was one of the first major uses of Steadicam in motion picture history. And Stanley, of course, in the past couple of movies prior to this, it had basically only been done for like running scenes where you're chasing a protagonist or you're running beside them or whatever, which at the time involved setting up dolly tracks and having people push the camera rig around, and it was always tedious and horrible and awful. But the actual inventor of the Steadicam came and worked with Kubrick for almost all of the production shoot. He was actually shooting it himself. But the two scenes with the big wheel going on the wood and on the carpet and on the wood and on the carpet, it's just scary. It just got scary the longer you watched it. So
I would want to mention that even though it's not a big scene, I love the job interview scene because Ullman is clearly kind of not really condescending, but he's very, I don't know, you just don't like him.
Smarmy. He's very smarmy.
Yeah. Jack is like going through the motions because he needs this job. And then at one point, Ullman says, well, there's something I need to tell you. Basically, the former landlord chopped up his wife and kids in a job interview. And Jack's reaction, I was thinking, he won 3 Oscars, and they all came around this time. It started with Cuckoo's Nest, and I think it may have ended with Terms of Endearment. And this movie was right in between those. And his reaction is priceless. He's like, oh, wow.
This got him ready for Witches of Eastwick.
Yeah, it's a great scene. And that's another thing I noticed also as far as Kubrick's way of filming one-on-one. He's constantly going close up, close up, close up. It's not just a pullback of them two talking. It's either one or the other. And I was like, I never noticed that before, but he does it all through this movie.
And he does these close-up intercuts with no camera movement, followed by huge scenes that are long and protracted with constant camera movement the whole time, which is so bizarre and different. Modern day filmmakers, the camera moves a lot because they can, so they do. If a simple interview like that with Ullman and Jack, the camera would probably do a little bit of a pan around showing both of them, and now we're suddenly over the shoulder of Ullman. And then we might come back and we're over the shoulder of Jack.
Or do the perspective of the guy they ask in. They ask a guy in about halfway through the interview, and they could use his perspective to show the two of them, but they don't.
Well, they only cut to him like twice, and it's both reaction shots. And it's when says, well, we kind of have this little accent. And the guy goes, look at Jack. You know, it's like, you're going to tell him? Okay, good. Let's see how he reacts. It does bring a point up. And what I'm going to try to do as we talk through it and the process and everything else is stuff that I gathered, watched this time, and looked at from the perspective of, we know history-wise that King did not like the movie when it came out. And
still
even down to the urban legend of when Halloran's on his way to the Overlook, he passes a wreck, and it's a semi-truck that's crushed a red Volkswagen. And the big urban myth is Kubrick put that on purpose to say F you to King, because Jack drives a red Volkswagen in the novel, and he intentionally used a yellow Volkswagen in the movie.
Oh,
and
I think
that's all BS and an urban myth. I do not think that was Kubrick's intent at all. But I came across this article, and this was fairly recent. This was like 2017, 2018. I think it may have come out around when Dr. Sleep came out. And it was an interview with King talking about the movie specifically. And one of the things he said I really glommed onto, and then just a few hours later, I was looking on YouTube and found this guy who mentioned it as well, the same interview and the same thing, which is a Stephen King quote. And he said, I really think that Stanley set out to hurt people.
Yeah, I know that one too.
And I started thinking about it. And then, like I said, I found this one YouTube guy, and the YouTube guy says, okay, I'm going to list all of the continuity errors in Full Metal Jacket. And he listed them, and there were like 5. And he goes, now I'm going to list all the continuity errors in The Shining. And there were literally like double digits. And he goes, this is a man who is meticulous, who plans his movies for 5 years at a time, who insists on multiple takes of a single shot.
Right.
He's not going to make a mistake on purpose. He might make 1, 2, he might make even 3. He's not going to make like 28 or 30. like this movie has. And the only reason he would do it was to be intentional, to make the audience feel nervous, even though they don't know why they're feeling nervous.
I want to know an example.
Okay, great example. Look behind you. The picture that you have is Danny with the ball in front of him.
Oh, yeah.
And
I know this example.
the carpet forms like a wall around him. The shot right before this, when the ball rolls up, Danny's got the cars in the same configuration, but it's an opening there. And the ball rolls right through the opening and right up to him.
That.
The big scene between Jack and Wendy, whenever you hear me typing or whatever, when he's the big yelling at her and says, "Get the hell out,"
in here.
Right? They keep cutting to a shot of Shelley Duvall, and then or Wendy, and then they cut back to Jack, and behind him, on the wall, is a small table and a chair. And then they'll cut to Wendy, and they'll cut back, and it's not there. They'll cut back to Wendy, they'll cut back, and it's there. They'll cut back to, and it's not, and it goes back and forth, and it keeps, and I was going, okay, so somebody literally intentionally moved or forgot to reset a table and a chair in one of the 70 or so takes he probably took of that? I don't think so.
And why would they move it to begin with if they're going to take all those takes?
Makes no sense. And the first one that got me this time, and like you said, we've probably watched this movie dozens of times, and I've never noticed this one before in my life. When Halloran is with Wendy, so he goes with Wendy and Danny while he takes Jack, while Ullman takes Jack. And they're going through the kitchen. It's that big, long tracking shot that he's establishing. He likes to do all these big, long tracking shots. And they're, again, great filmmaking. They're wandering through the kitchen almost like it's a maze around all these tables and around these walls. But Halloran's going, "Well, so are you a Winifred?" And she goes, "I'm a Wendy." He comes up, he comes around the corner. It's a one long shot coming toward us. And he reaches over and undoes the door, right? Then it cuts to inside. The door is on a different hinge opening the other way. And he and Danny and Wendy walk in, and you see them walk in on the other shot. Again, cuts to the other shot, and the door is hinged on the left, open like this. And they all walk in, the door closes, the cut to the inside, and he's closing it the other way. And they talk, and he goes, "You got everything you need." Then it cuts back to Jack and Ullman. Cuts back to them, and they're leaving. When they leave, they're in a totally different place. There's an office window across from them. That wasn't there before. There's a different bulletin board. There's a table in the background. And that's not how they came into the room. And I was going, okay, that's glaringly continuity. There's no way that wasn't intentional. There's no way that wasn't. That's not like your beer going to different levels in the scene, or
it's not
cigarette being different lengths of ash. You know what I mean?
Which I was watching her cigarette ash, that real long one that Shelley has at one point. I was waiting. I was like, they're going to mess up here. But they don't really. It does eventually look like it has fallen, but it is still pretty long. Yeah.
The scene where
she's
they
talking
first,
to the doctor about Danny's
the scene before
episode.
that one in the kitchen when they first meet Halloran. So she goes, "Oh, I love the color gold." They walk into the gold ballroom, which is, where we eventually meet Grady later on. And everybody's in the background, maintenance guys, and they're cleaning and putting on tablecloths. So anyway, they pan over to the bar, which is empty, and he makes a big note to say, "We get rid of all the booze to save on insurance." And all the chairs are tucked in. And this is one shot. And we're there looking, and then they talk for a few minutes, and then they see Danny, and we cut, and we follow the assistant walk Danny in. I found, this is after he'd seen the girls in the game room. He goes, "I found him outside looking for you guys, blah, blah, blah." And we follow, and Danny comes over.
Danny, you get tired of bombing the universe.
Yeah. And he ignores Daddy and goes right to Mom, right? And then Halloran walks up. Right? And he goes, hey, what's Halloran? Anyway, Halloran's first name. Why don't Dick? Yeah, why don't you take Mrs. Torrance, and I'm going to finish talking with Jack, right? And he goes, "Oh, yeah, sure. Danny, you want to come get some ice cream?" Whatever. They start to walk off. The camera pans over. All the chairs at the bar are away from the bar. They're not tucked in anymore. It's like people were sitting in them. And one of my guys online, of course, that I was watching about the continuity, he goes, "Of course, all the ghosts were sitting there, but we just couldn't see them yet."
No, I think he's saying that the ghosts are moving shit.
That's what I get the impression, too. I've always been of the conviction that he left it ambiguous but leaned much more toward less supernatural, more like Jack is crazy. And the more I watch it now, this time watching it, there's so much more in it that is just dissonance, that makes you uncomfortable, that makes you not, and some of it is totally subliminal, moving little things around that shouldn't be moved. It didn't
I
have a
mean,
reason.
there's plenty of supernatural in this. I don't think that he didn't intend for it to be supernatural. I think a lot of that is projected from King and his dislike of Nicholson.
Well, and also decades and decades and decades of people examining this movie for hidden meaning. And there have been entire documentaries on
That's insane.
of all the stuff that are just crazy, conspiracy
Yeah.
theories and everything else.
Yeah.
But like even down to the construction of the rooms and how he did the set. For those of you who didn't know, the exterior of this hotel is shot in a totally different place than the interior sets that they built for it.
It's in Pinewood Studios.
I think it's Elstree Studios, isn't it?
I don't know. It's in England, though. I know that.
And that happens a lot of times where architecture doesn't match. So if you look at, people have taken the Big Bang Theory or the Happy Days set and said this makes no architectural sense as far as a house would go. The doors, the back door and the front door are literally on the same wall.
Mary Tyler Moore's house, I think, was one
Mary
of them.
Tyler Moore's the same one.
They're like crazy designs that no one would ever have. The Brady Bunch is another one. Yeah.
And if it wasn't for all the following shots, and again, a directorial decision, if it had been in cuts, we can excuse some stuff. But without cuts, we think it's real. It's solid. It's what it is. So like at the very beginning, Jack says, I'm here to see Mr. Ullman. And we follow him around the corner and down the hall and over to here and into his office. Well,
It's very small.
But the window where his office is can't be a window because it's now facing the back of where the check-in clerk was. Because we went around in a...
That to me does not sound intentional. It's just something that he's figured no one would really notice.
But it happens 2 or 3 other times too, where scenes don't match that should match. You go around corners and there shouldn't be a wall there, but there is a wall there.
But I also saw a making of where they didn't have a lot of space, so they had to get really creative filming him on that big wheel and using different angles for him to go down the same hallway.
And get up enough speed so it made it work and look good. Yeah.
Or make it look like it's a long hallway.
Yeah. But there's several of those where things are just not in the same places architecturally to work.
That
makes no sense that would work that way.
Yeah. Now I want to go back and watch it and just look at stuff in the background because I guess I just wasn't paying attention because I don't remember that whole table thing disappearing at all. I'm so focused on Jack. It's hard not to look at Jack anytime in this movie.
Agreed. Well, and especially as much as you like Jack too anyway, and especially in this film, I can understand that. But I've got a list of some of them that were really cool. And some of them you've heard of before too. There's the big scene where Danny and Wendy are watching cartoons. This is before he has the scene where he goes up and sits on Jack's lap. But they're watching cartoons, and it's this big shot where it's pulling back from the television with both of them sitting there. There are no cables whatsoever going to the television. There's no power cable. There's nothing.
I did notice that.
It can't be on, but it is on. Again, something that we would, if you notice it, you notice it. But even then you say, oh, well, maybe, or but it's enough to unnerve you. It feels weird. It's not right. The bar that Jack comes in and meets Lloyd and everything else has a huge division in it. It's like the white translucent things meet like a seam that's probably 2 or 3 inches wide. As the scene goes on and it cuts back and forth from a couple of those 2 shots to back to Jack, that thing moves. And there's no way they're going to say either A, we're going to shoot it over here today. No, we shot it where we shot it. So that had to be intentional. I want you to get up and I want you to move 2 seats down for this shot. And we're going to do this. And then I want you to go back and finish it. Or we're going to edit it back that way. So again, that seems intentional to me. That's another one where the architecture doesn't work. Grady takes him into the bathroom. We cut, they come in the door perpendicular to us, and then they come towards us with all the urinals and everything.
He screws with breaking the fourth wall in that scene too.
A little bit, but he does it 2 or 3 times. I don't mind that either. That works for me. But where they are facing, it made a U-turn back to the bar. So they'd be back behind the bar, and it doesn't make sense where they are.
That's another scene I would mention too, because it's one of the longer scenes in the movie. Is when they talk in the bathroom and he's talking about what you need to do with your family, which is what I did with my family. I corrected them. That's a good scene.
Oh, the color of the
Sure, for this
typewriter
movie.
changes, and that's got to be deliberate. So
Yeah, I would think so, but
yeah.
I don't remember that. I think maybe you're right. He knew that some people would pick up on it and some wouldn't, because you literally are riveted to every performance in this movie, even the guy that plays Grady. I guess because it's such an immense location that any character, and there's only three really, you're going to focus on, whether it be Danny, Jack, or Wendy.
Well, I've always said this movie basically has 6 people in it. I don't count the park rangers. I don't count the guy at the rental place or whatever. But you've got the Torrances, Ullman, Halloran, and Grady.
And Grady, yeah.
That's it.
And then you've got incidental ghosts, the little girls, the guy that says "great party," isn't it?
And I think the inferences of things to make us feel uncomfortable go into the music, of course. Like you said, there's all this dissonant chords, weird instrumentation, going from very loud to very soft, plucks. There's also intentional stuff written that way. Like Ullman says Grady killed his 2 daughters, and he gives them different ages. It's like 10 and 12 or something like that. And yet the ones that we see, which we heavily imply, even though it's never said, those are Grady's kids, but there's blood, there's an axe, and there's 2 girls, so infer, but they're twins.
No, they're not. If you look really closely in the scene where Danny is throwing darts and they come in and he turns and sees them for the first time, one of them's taller than the other and looks a little bit different. Now, from distance, they're in the same dress and they look like they could be twins, but they're not twins.
Yeah, see, I think it's heavily inferred they're twins.
Well, it is heavily inferred when you dress them alike, for sure.
Yeah.
But if you look at them in the one close-up where they just come in and stare at him when he's throwing darts, you can tell they're different. They're not identical.
I have to watch it again. Oh, no, twist my arm.
Yeah. We could talk scenes forever. The scene that you were mentioning where all of a sudden Jack wants a drink and he goes to the bar and there's no liquor there. He puts his head down, looks back up, and the whole bar is stocked and Lloyd's standing there waiting to serve him. He is an alcoholic and has had accidents in the past. That's inferred if I haven't mentioned it already.
Another little cool point that I actually found in research online and then went back to watch the movie to make sure. But he said something after the dozens of times watching this. It never really clicked or worked on me, and now it does. So I'm curious if you'll watch it again and see. In a horror movie, a standard horror movie that you're used to seeing, you normally follow whoever they want to scare, whether it's the final girl or the guy or whatever. And then either they use the frame to scare you, meaning the monster jumps out and gives you a jump scare, or they turn and see the monster at the same time you do, whether it's Annabelle or the nun or whatever, and you freak out and you scream. He said in this movie, that happens a couple of times where you'll suddenly cut to something. It usually happens with Wendy, but with the exception of like 2 or 3 times, almost everything in this with the ghosts and with the scares and with things that unnerve you, the character sees it before the audience does.
Yeah, Wendy especially. It's like her reaction before you see it.
And then you see what she sees. Same thing with Danny. Danny looks scared like this, and then you see the woman or whatever. Jack does that whole rub and blah, 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 looks down, recognizes, goes, hello, Lloyd. And then we cut to Lloyd. And it's like, and I went, that is brilliant. That is so cool to do it that way.
A little slow tonight.
That's a great scene. It is so good. Your money's no good here, Mr. Torrance. I like to know who's paying for my drinks, Lloyd.
So anyway, scenes we've talked about. We've talked a little bit about background. I did want to say that I found something that said, despite receiving generally unfavorable reviews upon its initial release, the film is now regarded as one of the best horror movies ever made.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
But I would venture to say, and I say this all the time, and all you listeners out there probably hate me for saying it, I don't know that this would play well to a modern horror movie audience because it is a slow burn movie. It is not in your face horror. It is very subtle and well played horror.
Okay, so you just watched Nosferatu. How would you equate it with that? That's a modern movie.
It is, but that's also a period piece, and Robert Eggers strives to make everything historical. I don't think that movie would play well with modern audiences either, unless they're an aficionado like me.
Yeah.
Somebody that's an Annabelle fan, or what's a current, like Terrifier, or whatever
Oh,
those
God.
psycho gore movies are. Something
Yeah.
like this or Nosferatu is not going to be up their alley.
I
I
can see
wouldn't
that.
think. But now, if they're a horror aficionado like me that can appreciate everything, even some of the schlock, then yeah, they would have to recognize this for the brilliance that it is. Nosferatu too.
Agreed.
I can move on to cast if we.
Yeah.
It won't take
I'm
too
very
long.
curious to see what the cast was like for this if it wasn't this cast.
Oh, you mean like people that were considered? I do think I have a few. Jack Nicholson obviously is the biggie here. He plays Jack Torrance. He was Stanley Kubrick's first choice for Torrance. However, he had a second choice. Do you have any clues? You'll never get it.
No.
Chris Christopherson.
Oh my God, no. Hell no.
Well,
Even at that time, I think I love him in Blade or whatever. I wouldn't have put him in this, not for this character.
yeah. I think, well, it says it was his second choice had Nicholson been unavailable, and Nicholson was available. However, Stephen King tried to talk Stanley out of casting Jack Nicholson, suggesting either Michael Moriarty or John Voight. And I
Why?
know where
For both
King
of
is going. King is
Yep.
looking for somebody that is more safe and not going to be seen as crazy. And Jack had just done Cuckoo's Nest, and he's very good at playing manic.
Oh God.
Yeah. So,
And he does it from the very first scene. He gets those eyes even when he's talking to Ullman and that smile and everything. I'm sure she's going to love it. And you're
yeah,
like,
but
"Oh,
he
no, I
does
think
it
you're
in
gonna kill
terms
her."
of endearment, too. He's not crazy. He's an astronaut.
Yeah, agreed.
But anyway, he felt they were normal looking and wouldn't likely descend into madness. And he worked, I don't know for how long, but he was in contact with Stanley a lot during, I guess, the pre-production of this. And then I think things fell apart when they didn't use his screenplay. Because he
Yeah.
did do a screenplay as well.
And again, I don't think it's what Stanley wanted. I think
It's not,
Stanley
but it's-
wanted us to think either he's crazy or he's haunted, but we don't know which. And Stanley never ever says which. And in interviews since then, never said which. So I think that was intentional.
Well, actors are pawns to Stanley because he's creating his own artwork, basically,
Correct.
when he makes a film.
Correct.
It is like a masterpiece painting. However, I thought of another metaphor earlier when you mentioned the long pans with the short cuts. I was like, it's almost like an orchestra, like a piece of classical music. So it's not just visual. Well, it is visual, but you could equate it to music. It's very
Yeah,
artsy.
rhythm. There's
Yeah.
there's a pacing to it.
Right.
And he also used 8.5 millimeter lenses, which distort the face just a little bit in these close-ups. Not enough, not a fisheye, so we look weird or something, but just enough to make them feel off to an audience. But when they're in a long shot, they make everything seem huge around these small characters.
Right. The 14-foot hedge maze is actually only 8 feet.
Right.
They
and
made
looks
it look bigger.
ginormous. Yeah. And using these long tracking shots and these wide angle lenses and single point perspective. That's Kubrick's big thing. If you look at any of his last like 5 movies, they all love this, everything focusing into this single point perspective. And it makes us uncomfortable, but it makes it a work of art which is what he thinks it should be.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple of other people considered to be Jack. One was Robert De Niro, and the other was Robin Williams. This is before Robin Williams had done any movies, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think this was before Saigon. I mean, Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah, so that's saying a lot about Robin Williams. Based on Mork and Mindy, why Robin Williams?
I wonder if Peter Sellers had been alive, if he would have cast him.
That would be funny. He could play all the parts.
Yeah, he'll just play Halloran too. Acts himself. Yeah.
Anyway, he decided against them. He didn't think De Niro would suit the role after watching Taxi Driver because he deemed De Niro not psychotic enough. That's pretty funny.
And that's obviously what he was going for, too.
And he did not think that Robin Williams would suit the role after watching Mork and Mindy, as he deemed him too psychotic for the role.
Or too manic, probably, yeah.
And according to Stephen King, Kubrick also briefly considered Harrison Ford.
That would have been a good choice.
I think that could have worked.
If you were doing King's script, not Stanley's. Because we know from Temple of Doom that Harrison doesn't play crazy too well. The only time he plays crazy is when he's lying crazy, like in What Lies Beneath or whatever, the movie.
Yeah,
where he's
Michelle Pfeiffer or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but Harrison doesn't do crazy too well. Jack Nicholson is probably the consummate master of crazy.
Nicholson and Shelley Duvall have said the film was the hardest of their careers. In fact, Nicholson considers Duvall's performance the most difficult role he's ever seen an actress take on, and Duvall also considered the performance the hardest of her life. If you have to do 70 takes of hysteria, that's hard. That takes a lot out of it.
And be treated that way in between, too. If you watch all the behind the scenes, Stanley was intentionally pretty cruel to Shelley Duvall, I think. I looked it up, the staircase scene that we both love, the Wendy with a bat scene, from the time he starts around the desk, and they do intercut. They do cut in between Jack and Wendy's head. It's not one shot, but each of those was filmed one take at a time. So stay with Shelley's character, and we're going to wander all the way around, and Jack's going to be standing right behind the camera saying all those lines, and then we're going to shoot Jack and go all the way up the steps to the cut where she actually hits him. So we go from around the desk all the way across this room, up the stairs to Wendy, give me the bat, and all that. 127 takes. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It took them 5 days to shoot that scene. That's
I believe it, because it is
crazy,
one of my favorite
the level
scenes.
that you would be at as an actor to be there. So I found this interview with Spielberg where he's talking about Kubrick, and this was when they were pitching AI, and they were talking about AI. And he said, the average filmmaker shoots between 3 to 10 takes. He said, I personally like 7 to 10. Occasionally I'll take it on the third, but I'll never go below a third. And he outlines this big, long deal. I'm not going to go into it. You can look it up. Look at Spielberg's number of takes. But he basically talks about how things start changing with each take. And it takes basically to get back to the 7th take before the actors are now inventing and doing some cool stuff like they did on that very first take. Most directors, like he said, average between 7 and 10. Stanley Kubrick averages 40 takes per shot. 40. If it's just, I want you to walk across the room and the camera's not even going to move, it's just going to follow you. I want to shoot that 40 times.
Yeah, he did that to Jack just entering the hotel.
Yep.
And there's no dialogue. That's just stupid.
And when it comes to aggressive shots and stuff, imagine the amount of time and setup and tear down everything else. Like for Here's Johnny, there were 60 doors used in that scene. 60 doors he had to hack through.
Yeah. And he had to get his energy up for every take.
Yeah. And there's a great documentary that shows that particular scene in general, where he's getting up to be a murderer and everything else. But you can see this harrowed look in Shelley Duvall's face, even when she's not in character and walking and doing the scene. There's behind the scene footage of her actually collapsing and laying down and people having to give her water and stuff. You even mentioned Scatman Crothers said he'd probably never work again after this. He said he came to Stanley after 80 or so takes of that 7-minute scene with him and Danny, a 4-minute scene, crying, saying, Stanley, just tell me what you want, please, and let me do it so we can quit. But that one 4.5-minute scene, they filmed for 3 days. That would never happen budget-wise now, but that's borderline cruel. It really is.
Well,
Even though
with Kubrick, it would probably happen because he's got the weight to carry it and demand it. But I don't know.
Yeah, same with Spielberg, maybe.
But I think that's why he only works with actors once, almost. No one wants to work with him again.
True.
Slim Pickens was in Dr. Strangelove, and he was considered for the Scatman Crothers role in this movie, and he said, hell no, I'm not working with him again.
Nope.
However, Shelley Duvall played Wendy Torrance. Jack Nicholson had what I thought was a great suggestion for this role. He read the book and asked for them to put Jessica Lange in the role.
Yep.
And that is more along the lines of what Stephen King had in mind. Someone's a little stronger than Shelley. However, I still love Shelley's performance in this movie. It doesn't bother me.
The television remake that came out in the 2000s or whatever, the 2 or 3-parter on television, was Rebecca De Mornay. So yeah, prettier, a little bit stronger. Wendy's downtrodden from the first time we see her, the scene with the doctor.
Anyway, Kubrick convinced Nicholson that Duvall was the correct choice as she best suited the emotional, fragile Wendy he had in mind. So he had that in mind, obviously. Yep. Danny Lloyd, approximately 4,000 kids auditioned for this role. I sometimes wonder if some of these things get exaggerated and like maybe it was 400 or maybe he did look at 4,000 pictures, not actually auditions. Yeah.
I'd go there. Yeah.
That's just a little excessive.
And maybe only 60 of them were actual auditions.
It took 6 months to look at all them pictures. And his first choice was Cary Guffey, the boy from Close Encounters. However, Guffey's parents turned him down due to the film's subject matter.
Smart, probably.
Yeah. What else? Oh, Scatman Crothers plays Halloran. Like I said, Slim Pickens was his original choice, but he said no. Barry Nelson plays Ullman. Philip Stone plays Grady. Most of these guys I don't know a lot about. However, Joe Turkel plays the bartender Lloyd. We know him as Tyrell in Blade Runner, the creator of the androids in Blade Runner.
Although in this one, he looks like the devil. He really does. And he doesn't blink. And neither does Grady. I don't think either one of them blink.
Ghosts don't blink. Do you know who was originally supposed to play Lloyd?
No.
You'll love this.
I could see that.
But he was in Alien, and it was filming at the same time. So he couldn't be in it.
And he's a little gruffer. I think
he would have been friendlier. I think he wouldn't have been as cold.
Yeah, he would have been like, I'm your buddy bartender. The thing that Lloyd works so well is this very 30s feel. He feels like this is a historic character, but he's also just the way he's framed with that head always down, almost looking up a little bit. That Jack just gives him this menace.
He and Nicholson rehearsed this scene for 6 weeks. He said it's his favorite scene in the movie because it's his only scene in the movie.
I definitely think it's one of Nicholson's strongest performances in the movie.
It's great. Yeah.
Because
he's not doing that to anybody but a camera.
Momentary lapse.
Muscular coordination. I love the little son of a bitch.
Foot-pound per second.
Yeah. I don't have anything else on cast. This movie is included among the 1001 movies you must see before you die lists, which we used to have a bunch on there, and here lately we haven't had any of that. This one is definitely on there. It was nominated for 2 Golden Raspberry Awards, Worst Actress for Shelley Duvall, Worst Director for Stanley Kubrick. It lost both awards. However, in March of 2022, they officially rescinded Duvall's nomination when they discovered how her performance was impacted by Kubrick's treatment of her. And the retraction of the nomination was in response to a public backlash of Razzies received by Bruce Willis after it was learned that he had been diagnosed with aphasia. So that's weird that there's a connection to Bruce Willis and Shelley Duvall in this movie as far as Razzie Awards. It was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. That's no surprise at all. And that's all I have as far as cast and awards.
Just a few little trivia things I found that I didn't know before that people might not know. The whole Danny talking to Tony with his finger, he did at auditions. And that was not directed by Kubrick. Danny Lloyd came up with that idea, and
He
Stanley
picked it up.
wrote
Yeah,
it into
that's
the
great.
script. If you watch documentaries of this or read interviews, Nicholson and Duvall also were frustrated during the filming of this because there were constant rewrites, even the day of. That Stanley would rewrite something and blah, blah, blah. And that one documentary that basically follows Jack for a few days.
That's done by Stanley's daughter, Vivian, that
Right.
documentary.
As Jack is over here rehearsing something, in the background, you constantly hear a typewriter, and you look, she pans over, and it literally is Kubrick rewriting scenes right then in the kitchen set. I was like, oh my God. Not only am I going to have to do this 80 times, but I just saw it a few minutes ago. So
Nicholson basically said that he quit reading the script. He just waited until it was put in his hands the day of shooting. Read that somewhere. There are some outtakes. This is not really a key, but we mentioned this, I think, when we covered Blade Runner, where they added scenes of the opening of this film into Blade Runner at the end when Harrison Ford is driving away. Because
the helicopter shots.
Because Kubrick was a fan of Alien and Ridley Scott and allowed him to use only excised footage from this to fill in for that. I thought that was interesting.
I have a little trivia thing that might go along with your modern audiences don't appreciate or might not appreciate it as much. There are only 2 instances of violence in this movie, and yet it's a horror movie, and it's the threat of violence or the threat of something happening that
One of them is Wendy. She hits him in the head with a bat.
he cuts his hand too. So I guess
she
it's
does.
3.
You're right. So there's 3 if you consider
3
it a
instances of
stroke of a
violence.
knife.
Yeah.
And then he puts an axe in Halloran's chest, which does not happen in the book. Halloran lives in the book. He rescues them. And the hotel blows up. And it doesn't happen in the movie.
I have another one for you to look up on your next rewatch. And I haven't verified this one, but I found it online. Jack wears a variation of green in every scene at the beginning of the film until he wakes up from the dream about killing his family. After that, he wears a variation of red.
Interesting.
And I went, wait, I know in the Ullman thing he's wearing a green tie. I know that.
Well, and it's supposedly the hedge maze design, but I went and looked closer, and it just looks similar. It's not really the hedge maze design.
It's like a herringbone kind of hatch design, but it's
Green,
not the hedge maze.
Yeah.
Let's see. Two things I didn't. Oh, go ahead. Go. You do.
Well, you had said that King said that he thought Stanley made a film to hurt people. But the other famous King quote is that the movie is a great, big, beautiful Cadillac with no motor inside. You can sit and enjoy the smell of the leather upholstery. The only thing you can't get it to do is drive anywhere.
Wow. See, that's the mad at the filmmaker.
I'm telling you, I think it has to do with, well, first of all, King was drinking a lot and starting drugs around now. Yeah. And I think he was pissed that Stanley didn't want to use his screenplay. I really do. Anyway, that they had a falling out.
There is a mirror in every scene with the ghost, except the girls in the game room or the hallway. But if you say they're twins, then they're a mirror of each other, so the fact still works. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. Jack, when Ullman comes to get him once the family has arrived and they come to get him, he is reading a Playgirl sitting in the lobby.
Yeah. I noticed that.
I never, ever saw that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you would.
And I was always wondering, why is he reading a Playgirl?
Right.
For the
I
article.
mean, obviously for the articles, of course.
Well, I've got an argument here for your supernatural thing. You said Stanley Kubrick was doing less supernatural.
Yeah.
I disagree because during filming, he made the cast watch 3 movies to put them in the right frame of mind. One was Eraserhead, but the other 2 were Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, and both of those are supernatural.
But I don't know if Stanley would have had you watch that for the supernatural influence as opposed to the horror elements of it. Each of those movies is somebody who is being dominated by an outside force.
Agree.
So maybe that to that point, yes.
That shows that he knew he was making a horror movie, though.
Well, I definitely think he knew he was making a horror movie. I just think that he intentionally left it ambiguous, even down to the freaking last shot, and not explaining it at all and saying, you figure it out. What do you think it means? So there's all, and I just think that was all intentional choices. That wasn't just, oh, this is due next week, I need to cut right now and get it out. I think all these were definite choices that he made to throw people off or to make them think or talk or to keep us mentioning it 40 years after the movie.
This is a redux, folks, so some of this stuff is a repeat of what we talked about before. I found it very funny that Stephen King claims that Stanley would call him up at 3 o'clock in the morning and ask him questions like, do you believe in God? And
of course,
Steven Spielberg heard the story and asked Kubrick if it was true, and Kubrick denied it. But the way I look at it is if he's filming in England and King's in America, it would have been late at night when he got a phone call.
Well, yeah, of course.
And then I've only got one other little trivia thing about it before we get to Keys, and it's something that Brian De Palma said. He claimed that Kubrick can't direct horror because he doesn't like or understand people.
That was probably done in the 80s. That quote, I'll bet, came from the 80s or the early 90s. And I disagree with that. I think Stanley can take any genre he wants and do it, whether it's science fiction or horror or army or Spartacus or whatever. He could do whatever he wanted, I think, and do it in a way, what I've always said about Kubrick. So even if you didn't like the movie, you leave with images in your head that you will never be able to forget.
I think he understands people. I think when you watch that documentary and see him reacting to cast and crew members, he seems very personable. He doesn't seem standoffish at all.
Not like a Hitchcock or something.
But I do think that the actors are the least important thing to him when making a movie. I think that they're like set pieces.
Like Hitchcock. Hitchcock was the same way.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're just meat puppets. Just do with them as you will.
I don't think he was a bad guy or anything at all. No.
As a segue to Keys, he did keep one of my favorite things in the book and one of the most literary things in the book that got me every time, which was Red Rum. I read it like 47 times and didn't realize it was murder backwards until he said it's murder backwards. And I went,
Danny
oh my
says
God.
it 40-something times.
Yes.
Before you see it in the mirror backwards.
Yeah.
Because he's just
I think
going
it's
around going,
brilliant.
Red Rum, Red Rum, Red Rum.
Red Rum, which was great. Even though Stephen King at the time objected, and to an extent, it's how we started this interview or this podcast, but the book is definitely the inspiration for this movie.
Oh,
I don't think
hands
Kubrick
down.
could have made a movie without that book.
And that's where his relationship with Stephen King began and obviously probably ended as well.
True.
And then there's other things too. There's been another adaptation, the miniseries that you mentioned with Rebecca De Mornay. Has Steven Weber in it too. I don't hate the miniseries, but I literally cannot watch it because I think the kid playing Danny is so bad. It's like the kid in the Babadook. He just rubs me wrong, and I can't watch it.
Yeah, but the kid in the Babadook is really good. I don't like the kid in The Shining.
The kid in The Shining is too big, and he's too whiny. I hate him.
Well, it's very interesting to compare them just because they actually shot that one at the Stanley Hotel. It was the original inspiration for King to write the book in the first place. But the Stanley is very small and tiny. The hallways, the rooms, the grand ballrooms are tiny and everything. And There's not this grandioseness that this movie has where the characters seem insignificant and small in it. So I think that really affects it. And also it's made for television, so they went for all these television cliches.
And it's Mick Garris, who's hit or miss.
It does stay more true to the book. Yeah.
And Mick directed The Stand, which is probably the best version of The Stand there has been so far.
But he does have horrible CGI topiary maze characters, topiary animals. They're terrible.
And Kubrick has gone on record to say that's why they created the hedge maze, because he knew how ridiculous the hedge animals would look. So he didn't do it.
I'm sure you have it as well, but I have Dr. Sleep, which essentially is the sequel novel and sequel movie to this. And the thing that I think should always commemorate Mr. Flanagan is the fact that he took King's book and Kubrick's movie and weaved them together to make Dr. Sleep.
With Stephen King's permission, and I also think that Stephen has softened his view of the Kubrick film because of Mike Flanagan.
I agree.
Think that he's a little bit more tolerant of it now.
Yeah, I think maybe Mike showed him some things that actually worked.
He was like a conduit or a therapist.
A therapist.
Steve, you need not be so mad about this. It's still a good movie.
Yep.
I have one that I don't know if we mentioned it the first time around, but a couple seasons back, we did a movie that we started realizing King actually ripped off for this, and that is Burnt Offerings. The Robert Marasco book, Burnt Offerings, is about a family that move into a haunted house, and eventually the father gets homicidal and everybody dies, basically. That book came out in 1973. The Shining came out in 1977, and I know King loved the book because he talked about it in his Danse Macabre book. It's a nonfiction book he wrote back in the early 80s. We'll say he was inspired by it, but Burnt Offerings is almost a blueprint for this movie. It really is. It's just not a hotel, it's a house. So...
Well, yeah, it's more like the book than the movie because at the end of Burnt Offering, the house restores itself. And in this one, in the book, the Overlook blows up because they don't do the boiler. Yeah. I have Poltergeist. Not only is it a family that's being haunted, but there's also 3 or 4 different references to Indian burial ground and all that. So,
and I have The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, yeah. So
more the book really than the mini series or the movie, but Shirley Jackson's original novel. King knows what was classic horror. He was reading it before he was writing it, and he clearly loved that book too.
I have Jurassic Park because Spielberg has said that Danny hiding in the little kitchen cabinet was a direct influence and he stole it to put in Jurassic Park.
Oh, that's great. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
And like when he yells and there's that long shot and you see Danny come out, you're like, why did he come out? Why didn't he just be quiet?
Well, because he's a kid who doesn't know where dad is and it scares him, which would have made a lot more sense if he had a croquet mallet in his hand and hacked his face off. That scares me to death. I imprinted me as a child.
Yeah,
that
I can
really
tell.
did. I have Midsommar because again, for most of this movie, it's in the day and we're still scared. It's very brightly lit and we're still scared. It's not shadowy corners or people jumping out or anything like that. It's very brightly lit. We are shown the entire scene in these great huge tracking shots, and yet we still get tense and dread and scared.
Yeah, yeah. I have The Omen. The tricycle riding around the house.
Oh, I didn't get that. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's in The Omen. He literally knocks his mother off a balcony on the tricycle. But in this, it's just basically him riding around on a big wheel type trike.
Wow. I have one I got from online, which is Jack's final pose in the very last shot when he's in the photograph from 1932 or whenever it is, and his hands are down to his sides and he's smiling up and everything else. That pose is very similar to the one we always see of Baphomet, the medieval drawing of the demon, Baphomet, with the hands out and down and the head up and everything. Although he has a ram's head, but Baphomet. Oh, M-E-T, sorry, not M-A, M-E-T. B-A-P-H-O-M-E-T.
Okay, I don't, all right.
It's just a demon, Tim.
It's a demon.
It's a demon.
It's one of them demons.
Yep.
I sent you a trailer for a movie called The Car. Did you
Yes,
watch it?
I probably did. I don't remember though. I
Well, the
didn't.
opening is almost identical. It is the same music. Dun, dun,
Hmm.
dun, dun. Yeah. And it came out in 1976. So I'm like, Stanley, are you like, did you see this film? Is it in your subconscious? What's going on here?
Well, I saw one online and I did look it up, and it is correct. Clockwork Orange. The opening notes and tones of Clockwork Orange
Hmm.
are the same five notes as the opening tones of The Shining. But
And
instead of
did
it
you?
being bom, 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 it's bom, da, 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 bom, da, 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 da.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's the
I
same
saw the
tones.
interview with that woman that
Yeah.
did the music, and they showed her playing both
And I think her
things.
name
And
was Wendy, wasn't it?
it is
Isn't her
Wendy
name Wendy?
something,
Yeah.
yeah. According to Stephen King, the title was inspired by the John Lennon song "Instant Karma." We all
Ah,
shine on,
we all
which
shine on.
a friend of mine has a bookstore, and that's his logo. We all shine on, or his motto.
I have one that reminded me of you. The last shot of Jack, the next to last shot before he actually sits down in the snow and it does that jump cut to him being frozen. Before that is when his voice is almost gone. He's really guttural, but he's like swinging the axe and going, "Dang, ah." It's very Chainsaw, the end of Chainsaw when Leatherface is swinging the chainsaw around and all
Oh, when
mad and
he's just,
frustrated.
yeah, and he's belligerent. He's like
Yeah.
mumbling nonsense and
He's
stuff. Yeah, yeah,
and he's all mad and because he's in the
yeah.
middle of the road and everything.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that fast cut too. It's very
Oh, to
Jeremiah
Jack
Jones.
Frozen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeremiah
There's no
Johnson.
denouement in this movie, by the way. The whole slow pan down the hallway to the photograph is not a denouement. We never hear from Wendy or Danny again. We
No, in the
don't know
book you
what.
do.
I
Yeah,
mean,
there's a
they
whole scene in Florida with Danny, Wendy, and
and
Halloran.
Halloran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have. Well, the only other one I have is Eraserhead because basically, and I
Yeah.
already mentioned this earlier. Kubrick has cited the film as a creative influence and that he used it to get people into the mood. But I
Yeah.
think it's funny that 2 weeks in a row we've had a movie that the key was Eraserhead because last week for Possum we did it too.
And we've never done that movie on the
No, it's on
podcast.
my list, but I just haven't picked it.
I have one final one, which you should know. This totally instilled in me, or not instilled, but it ratified to me the reason why you should never, ever, ever keep a shower curtain closed. Ever.
It's not closed, it's half open.
That's too open. Half is too far. It needs to be open all the way.
And you can
So
see through it.
nobody can be behind it on the other side. No, 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 no.
That's a scene we didn't even mention, the whole bathtub scene. We get to see the aftermath of Danny. We don't get to see what he sees, but then Jack goes up there and we get to see what he sees.
Yes. It leads to one of those other questions of the way it's written and the way it's done. Why does Jack lie? If Jack, is he possessed? Does he doubt himself? It's just one of those other ambiguous things that we don't know.
Nah. I think that's all the keys I have. I don't know how to give any more praise to this movie than I already have. This is definitely one of the best movies, in my opinion, ever made. But a lot of folks, including Stephen King, are not of the same opinion. Of course, he's a little closer to it than most folks because he wrote it. Even if Stanley Kubrick treats people like set pieces, the performance in this movie by everybody is a knockout of the park, pretty much.
And I would add that for me, this movie checks all the boxes. It's got great performances, it's incredible direction, it's incredible production design, great music, great pacing. The story, even where it asks you to ask questions, still works and makes sense. And to Kubrick's credit, like for every film he ever did, there are images in this that you will always remember. You can never forget. whether it's the girls at the end of the hallway, whether it's Jack frozen, whether it's Wendy, give me the bat, all these, just, this is a work of cinematic art.
And you know what? Stephen King probably ripped off Burnt Offerings for the book, but Kubrick ripped it off for the movie because at the end of the movie, they all end up being in pictures.
That's true, on the mantle.
Yeah,
No,
and that's
on the
not in the
table.
book.
Yeah.
That's only in the movie. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Burnt Offerings are key both ways, book and movie.
Interesting. Well, folks, that's what Tim and I think of this incredible movie, and we hope you guys think it's incredible too. If you do, let us know what you like about it. What scenes do you like? What works for you? If you didn't like it, convince us. Let us know. What didn't you like? What don't you like about it? Leave us comments down below. We'd always appreciate a review if you could do that. And then, of course, the typical subscribe, like, do all those good things. Share us with your friends. Let other people know about us, because we would love to have you. It makes a great Halloween gift. Hey, let me tell you about Johnny Has the Keys. What could be a better Halloween gift than that? We do have a Patreon. So if you go over to our Patreon, you can help support the podcast and help us continue to do this. We have free material as well as some tiered material, other podcasts that we do on other subjects, including Star Trek, the original series, and the X-Files. And Tim, do we get out of horror next week and go somewhere
Oh my
cool?
God.
Neat,
Well,
different?
it depends on your definition of horror.
Perfect.
We are going into our Thanksgiving episodes before we break. We're going to have a couple episodes, and they are similarly themed in the apocalypse realm, and
There
they're
you
both
go.
science fiction.
Well, good.
But I'm
As
not
well they
sure
should
they're
be.
great science fiction, but they're definitely science fiction.
Well, we'll definitely let you guys know when
One of them's
it's
good
that
to me,
time.
for sure.
Well, Tim, until then, have a great Halloween. Carve some pumpkins, scare some children, do good things.
Lindsay!
Let me in, Tommy. Let me in. No. See you
All
then.
right. See you later. Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.